Good evening, everyone. Jesse at Schoolcraft Family Farmstead, and it is cold. We had a lot of rain yesterday, I think about 1.5 inches of rain total, and got some snow this morning. I would estimate probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch, somewhere in there. Not much, but enough to coat the ground a little bit. And the HeatMaster is fired up. That's the topic of this video. I wanted to do a quick review about this HeatMaster C500, which is our outdoor, it's actually supposed to be, I think, a coal burning furnace, but it's our wood burning furnace. And wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons and compared to our last one, and some of the issues we've had with it as well that I believe are now fixed. So we got our first outdoor wood furnace here. I think it was something like December of 2004, if I remember correctly. And I think the brand on it was like a Pacific Western or Pacific Northern, something like that. I believe it was a Canadian company. But anyway, we started having issues with it several years ago. Started leaking and would overheat. And then I tried to get with the company about a warranty, only to realize they'd gone out of business. So I made it last as long as I could. I think I made it last for several, or probably a few years with it leaking, and was having to fill it up with water more and more. And we finally bit the bullet and got this HeatMaster. For the most part, I've liked it, with the exception of a couple of issues I've had with it. But I'll go over some of the differences first between this one and our previous one as to why I like it so much, and then talk about some of the issues we've had as well. Our previous furnace was really not well designed. The main reason is because a couple of reasons actually. First of all, the blower motor was at the bottom of the door, and so that means that it would not completely burn all of the wood, and it would turn some of it into charcoal because it was blowing the air straight into the firebox, which would, like I mentioned, leave a lot of charcoal behind, which leads me to the second issue that we had with that other boiler that I really like about this one. There was no ash pan on the first boiler that we had, and this one has an ash pan, which I know is pretty common now, but when we got this, it felt so nice to be able to empty out nice clean ash and have hardly any charcoal left behind that I was having to just rake out the front. That's how I had to empty that first boiler that we had. We just had to rake all the ash out the front door, and it, like I said, had a lot of charcoal left behind. But this burns so much cleaner because the fans, the blower motors, are in the back, and that blows the air from underneath through a grate right in the middle and causes just about all of the wood. Let me turn the fan off. By the way, here's the control panel. Forgot to show you that. The top one is the blower motors. Turn that off, and there's your light. That's something else that I like about this. Forgot to mention that too. Our first one had just one switch that you'd turn the blowers off that would turn a light on at the same time, and this one has two switches, so you can have the light on even when the blowers are on, which is nice when it's dark out here. This one has a considerably larger firebox as well. I can fit some sticks in here that are right around 4 feet long, and there's a grate all the way across the firebox, straight down to the back of the boiler. That's where the air comes up from underneath, and the ash drops straight down into the ash pan. So much better and so much more efficient than that first boiler that we had. Up top, this is the heat exchanger. So there is a really long plate all the way down through that you can remove, and it forces the heat to be contained a little more instead of just wasting so much heat going straight out the chimney. So the smoke has to go, the opening in the firebox is at the back, so it has to go up, then come all the way up here to the front door, and then up through a slot, and then all the way to the back again before it goes out the chimney, which helps utilize as much of the heat as possible, obviously. But that builds up some creosote over time. I usually try to clean that out when I'm really burning consistently. I try to clean it out about once a month, and the ash pan has to be cleaned out about once a week. Here, with this being such an old house and there's little, if any, insulation in the house, we burn through a lot more wood than we should need to, but that's just the way it works. Oh, something else I like better. There are several things I do like better about this one compared to our last one. There's the water gauge right there. Very easy to read. The previous one and the little control panel had this little, it almost looked like a fuel line on a weed eater, just a little small rubber hose, and you had to sight the water in that rubber hose. So this is so much easier. And we added, on the last one, I had to bring a hose or a bucket out here and fill the old boiler from the top. We added a water line in the basement so that I can just turn a nozzle if I need to add water, which is almost never. So that's much nicer than the previous boiler as well. This was manufactured in November 2018, and we got it in December 2018. And I'll put some pictures on here as well from the installation that we did, which was really easy because the lines were already run to the basement, to the furnace in the basement, so that all we had to do was unplug the first boiler and plug this one in. And here's the back door. You can see, well insulated to help contain as much of the heat as possible. There's the pump that pumps the water, keeps the water circulating. There are two blower motors right there. And the fan box, as Belle checks everything out, make sure it's working properly. Here though, underneath the wires to the fan and the pump, this is where the issues began. I would estimate that the issues started toward the end of the first burning season, so that was probably early spring 2019. Looks a lot different now because I think we've finally gotten it fixed, thanks to HeatMaster finally developing a fix for this, because it sounds like from my communication with the company that a lot of people were having this same issue. You can see here, it now has a nice Honeywell actuator. So what happens, when the temperature gets down to 170 degrees, the water temperature gets down to 170 degrees, this actuator will open this, the damper right here. You can see the rod that connects between the actuator and the damper box here. Right now the damper is closed, and when the water temperature gets down to 170, this will turn nice and slow until it's completely open and allows the fans to blow air into the firebox to keep the fire going. Now the damper rod is just a straight rod all the way through the actuator, and it opens up nice and gently and is not loud whatsoever. Doesn't really compare to how it used to be. These here were one of the two roots of all of our problems with this wood burning furnace. How it used to be set up, how it came from the factory, was this solenoid, which is locked up, which happened numerous times, used to be mounted right there. And you can see where the wires right there used to go to the solenoid. And it used to be mounted right there on that plate below those, where those wires come out. And how it would work is there would be a cotter pin right through here that would connect to a spring. And that spring used to connect to a much shorter damper rod right here. And when it would reach 170 degrees, this solenoid would slam up, and that spring as well would slam open the damper box, and then when it would reach 180, the solenoid would lower back down and shut off airflow. And it would also do it between 170 and 80. So imagine, I don't remember the exact time increments, but I want to say it was around every 2 to 3 minutes. When the water temperature was between 170 and 180 degrees, this solenoid was going up for about 2 to 3 seconds, then back down. It was like pilot heat, allowing brief bursts of air into the firebox to help keep the fire going. Over time, all that up and down, up and down, up and down on the solenoid, with just a cotter pin and a spring through here, my first issue was I had a spring break. I came home one day and there was hardly any air, hardly any smoke blowing out of the chimney. And so I came back here to the firebox to find a broken spring. Got another spring. It lasted a little while longer, broke again. I bet you I went through, probably in the lifetime that we had these junk solenoids on there, I bet I went through 12 to 15 springs right there in around 3 years. So after I went through numerous springs, I had probably gone through a few at this point, I got home one day and it sounded like there was a steam locomotive just sitting still near me. Well, there's no railroad near me and there aren't any steam locomotives used anymore. So I was trying to figure out what it was. So I came over here to the boiler, and where you can see right above me right there, where the water gauge is, there was steam coming out of there, which is not supposed to happen, obviously. So I went over and checked the water temperature, and it was around 220 degrees. So I became very concerned about heat damage to the boiler and trying to figure out what was causing this, because the fan was not on. So I went back here to the door at the back of the boiler and saw that these junk solenoids, this one was locked open, locked solid. I couldn't get it to budge, couldn't get it to break loose at all, and it was allowing air, a small amount of air, because granted, once the water temperature hits 180 degrees, the fans shut off, but it was allowing a small amount of air to trickle in that allowed the water temperature to get way too hot. So at that point, I'd had enough, because I was really upset because I'd liked everything about this boiler, and then we start having these little issues. Well, maybe not so little, could potentially be big. So I started calling HeatMaster once again, because I'd already been in contact with them because of the broken springs. And then I told them about the solenoid, and I basically told them, look, if this caused heat damage to our boiler to where it starts leaking or starts causing premature failure, you're going to have to be on the hook for this, because I can't trust it. I went to work and I came home and it was out of control, too hot. So They told me they knew about these issues. They don't know why these solenoids had started failing, but apparently numerous other people were having these issues, and that they were working on developing a fix. So they sent me another solenoid. Actually, they sent me 2 solenoids and about 3 springs, because the lifetime of a spring at that point was getting down to a couple of months before it would break. I even pulled a loop out of a few springs that would break and just reused it before that loop broke, and then replaced it. But I think by the time it was all said and done, I probably went through 4 or 5 solenoids. According to HeatMaster, they had told me they don't know why these solenoids had started failing, because they had used them for a long time, but apparently the maker of these solenoids, which this one says Dormeyer Products, had somehow changed the way these solenoids were made. I don't know. And they had started locking open in my case, which was really bad because it allowed the boiler to overheat. Thankfully, so far, we haven't had any evidence of damage from this. We haven't had any issues as far as heat-related damage goes that I can see. So hopefully that continues. So far, this actuator seems to have solved all of our problems. They sent this in a kit with an extended damper rod. I had to cut the old damper rod off and then attach this extended damper rod to what little bit of the original damper rod was left, and then run it through this Honeywell actuator. It's so much more gentle when it opens and closes. So that's why I think it will solve all of our problems. And hopefully I'll just love this HeatMaster for the rest of its time here, till it gets too old and decides to fail. So we'll see how long it lasts. Like I said, we got it in December 2018, so we've had it a little over 5 years now. The last one, I made it last for 14 years, but it probably should have been replaced sooner. Watch, see that arrow is moving. It shows you the actuator very gently opening. See, it takes quite a while. It's okay, because like I said, those old solenoids would slam the damper rod open and shut. Just now, completely open. Both motors blowing air in on the fire. Then once the water temperature hits 180 degrees, fans will kick off. Send the aquastat will send a signal here to the actuator, and you'll see that it will gently start to shut. That'll be a few minutes. It's just now turned on, obviously. Usually it takes a few minutes for it to get back up to 180, and then it'll shut off until it gets back down to 170 again. I had to empty the ash pan today as well. Just wanted to show you just how clean it burned up. This is probably nothing earth-shattering, but when I first started emptying the ash pan on this boiler, it was for me, because like I said, the old boiler, this would have been full of chunks of charcoal and sometimes small unburnt chunks of wood as well, along with some ash. And now it's almost entirely ash with just a few little tiny coals, like you can see there, and a few very tiny chunks of charcoal here and there that slip through the grate. So much more efficient and more cleanly burning. Tell them that's all for today, Belle. Or not. It wasn't very nice. Anyway, that's all for today. Just wanted to do a quick little review on our HeatMaster, our outdoor wood furnace. Overall, I really like it, especially now that we got the solenoid issue fixed, and there's no more solenoids. There are no more solenoids. There are no more springs. Just that nice Honeywell actuator. And Hopefully it'll last us for a long time yet to come. If you would, please like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And check out some of my other videos. And somebody turn the heat back on, please. It's supposed to be -3, and that's only the temperature. It's supposed to be -3 in the morning. We'll see if they, hopefully they don't cancel church. But if they do have church, probably be a small turnout. So we'll see. And we'll see what the wind chill is. We have a wind chill advisory, but I bet it'll be 10 to 15 below at least. But we'll see you next time. Stay warm and take care.